Hi, I'm Keith Hunter, and this is the Bulldog Bark. And joining me today on the Bulldog Bark, I've got Mr. Willie McClendon from the Swanee class of 1961. Now, Mr. McClendon offers a unique perspective. He went to Douglas for 11 years and then switched over to Swanee when the schools were no longer segregated in 1961. And so Mr. McClendon was a graduate of Swanee, the class of 1961. Now, Douglas class of 61, as they're still so called, were going to have their 50-year reunion. But for the last 2 years, the union has been canceled because of COVID-19. But still, the Bulldog Bark, we wanted to reach out to Mr. McClendon and pay homage to the Bulldog classmates of 1961. Many of the Bulldogs' family lines come from that class, the class of 1961 and other classes at Douglas High School. So again, we wanted to pay respect and give honor to the class of 1961. Joining me on the Bulldog Bark is Mr. Willie McClendon. Players that came along, myself, I played quarterback back in the day, and of course you mentioned Tommy Randolph. What was special about Tommy? We're just talking football today.
Now, Tommy was, like I say, 4 years under me.
Right.
And when I was at Swanee High, Tommy was, I guess he was at the middle school. He wasn't at the high school, but I did get to watch him play. Tommy was, man, he was superb. He was calm from what I can remember about him. He never got excited, but he could deliver on the long bomb. He was real good at handing the ball off, and he held the position down well, as far as I can remember. Like I said, that's been a while back, but
right.
Tommy is a guy that I respect a lot, and I had in his growing up, he was always the guy that was going to do the right thing. I put it like that. He was good to ask a question in that quarterback position.
You also mentioned earlier the Hankerson. Can you talk about that family line?
Right. Hankerson ran track with me at Swanee High. Hankerson was a freshman when I was a senior, and he was, out the starting blocks on that track team, he was one of the fastest you've seen out of the blocks.
Right.
Hankerson was a great running back, and he was just, a good athlete. We ran track together, but he has some brothers that was good as well. Herbie and Herman Wells, they were his brothers.
Right.
And they played at Douglas.
Right.
They were older, and both of those, they played defensive back for Douglas. Herbert Wells and Herman, they were both good. So he came from an athletic family, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, being that it's 50 years, and of course 51 years, but we're looking back on the 50th year. Were there some players that were in your class that came on over to Swanee for that final year? And of course, this would have been
in 69, 70.
Right.
Yeah.
Who were some of those players, if you can refresh our memories on that?
That's readily comes to mind is Anthony Colvin and Sylvester Warren.
Right.
They played on that Douglas team with us, and they came right on over to Swanee High and played football. And I think Anthony played defensive end.
Right.
I'm not sure Sylvester. He played on defense as well, but I'd have to go back to the annual and look in there. But they're both there, yeah. Sylvester Warren and Anthony Colvin. Yeah.
Right. Like I said, I know the last time we talked, you had mentioned the fact about my Uncle Eddie. He passed last year, of course, as well.
Right. Now, I got more information on that Douglas football team than I have on the Swanee, because your Uncle Eddie Kelly, like I told you, he was a legend, man, a legend in his own time. I wish that we could have had a track team at Douglas during those years in the early 60s.
Right.
Eddie Kelly was one of the fastest guys that come through Douglas campus. Eddie Kelly, Raymond Gracie,
right,
and Clyde Hillman. They was three of the fastest guys that come through back in the day. Yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna play a little quick game with you. It's gonna be quick now, but we're gonna go with some of your classmates at Douglas, and as I call a name from Swanee that you may remember, I want you to just try to think of somebody that may have reminded you of that person. Now, this is going to be testing you. We're gonna test you here. Okay, so we're gonna start out with when I call the name Tommy Randolph. Who was from Douglas that remind you of Tommy Randolph?
Jimmy Lee Williams.
Okay, and what about Jimmy Lee was special?
Jimmy Lee was all-around athlete. He reminded me a lot of time. Jimmy Lee could throw a football. He could run it. He was athletic. He was just quick in the pocket. Now he wasn't the quarterback. He was Alfred Smith was our quarterback.
Right. And, how would you compare Alfred versus Tommy Randolph?
Pretty much the same. Alfred could throw the long ball. He was very athletic.
Right.
And he was maneuverable. Alfred was smart. I would compare him pretty much close to the same. Okay. Tommy was a little bigger than Alfred. Yeah.
Okay. How about if we took a Matt Fryer, and of course any receivers that were maybe short in stature but just had the hands of steel that played for Douglas?
I would compare Matt Fryer to my late brother-in-law Larry Cook. He was one of our wide receivers over at Douglas, and Larry Cook was small, but he would go and get the football. When Alfred threw it, a lot of times he couldn't even see Larry Cook, but Larry Cook would come and get the ball. We had Larry Cook and Richard Hill as our wide receiver. So Matt Fryer would be compared to either one of those two. Both of them were good.
How about Richard Hill versus Ralph Lott? Not who's better, just comparing them, that's all.
Just comparing them. Ralph, hand-wise, both of them were good. Ralph was probably just a tad faster.
Okay. Dexter Haynes. Who would remind you of Dexter Haynes back in the day?
Dexter Haynes would be compared to a Curtis Butler.
And what was special about Curtis Butler? Because Dexter tote that rock.
Yeah. Curtis Butler was a bruising back, and he was an elusive back. Curtis went to Swanee High in the middle grade, and then he came back to Douglas his last years.
Right.
And he played at Douglas. But Curtis was a fullback, and he was just an elusive back.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Donnie Allen? Who would put you in the mind of Donnie Allen?
Sylvester Warren. Headhunter.
Okay. All right. How about if we'll call a few more. C.J. Jones. Who would you say?
C.J. Jones at quarterback. There was a guy that came from Douglas by the name of Rudolph Northington. Rudolph was an elusive, short stature quarterback, but man, could he throw a football, and he was very elusive.
Okay. Reginald Ford.
Reginald Ford. Okay. I remember Reginald. I would compare him
super fast.
Yes, super fast. I'd have to compare him with Raymond Gracie.
Okay, that's a good comparison. Also, the same kind of stature as well.
Right, same stature.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I tell you, man, if anybody can tie the future together, I mean the past from Douglas and Swanee, it's you. You know.
Well, I thank you for that compliment. It's a lot that I don't know, but it's a lot that I do remember.
Right.
Walking the sidelines at Douglas, and I remember the dads on the sideline coaching their sons from the sideline.
Right.
You had people like William Carter. They called him Doc Carter. He had two sons that was running back, William Carter Jr. And Tyrone Carter, which was called Chuck. And William Carter played along with your brother, your Uncle Eddie.
Right.
And both of those, they were good. And the old man, Edgar Washington.
Oh, wow.
Edgar Washington. That was Thomas Washington's dad.
Okay.
Thomas was a bad defensive back for Douglas. And his dad would be on the sidelines coaching. You know, he's telling those boys, look out, Tom, he's coming your way. Okay. So we had fun at Douglas. Yes.
Okay, and I got two more names. Who at Swanee would remind you of the great Willie McClendon from Douglas?
Man, you put me on the spot there. Huh?
We'll come back to that one. How about Tracy Brown?
Tracy Brown.
Yes, sir.
That would once again be Curtis Butler, the bruising back.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, now I've given you time to think about yourself as we close this out. Who was that great bulldog that reminded?
I know where you're trying to get me to go. I'd have to say Rodney.
Okay, all right. Rodney McClendon. And there we go. Thank you, Mr. Willie McClendon, for joining me on the Bulldog Bark. You know, I'm so sad that the class of 1961 from Douglas hasn't got a chance to celebrate 50 years from graduating. Again, I want to thank you for joining me, Mr. McClendon, on the Bulldog Bark. We pay honor to the class of 1961. We'll see you next week right here on the Bulldog Bark for more Oh My's and Hunker Downs. We'll see you next week right here on the Bulldog Bark. We'll see you then.